So, Kavon, if you want to get started with your presentation, I know you've got a lot of good things to share. As you mentioned earlier, new receivers, refreshed projectors, and even at very modest pricing in the projector, a whale of a product. And then
Yeah.
also, of course, you're killing it right now with the flat panel TVs. So, if you want to fire up and take us in with the home theater tech preview.
Yeah, sure thing. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and start with receiver, and then we'll kind of just see where the wind takes us. But just getting into the start of our new lineup of receivers, and I kind of like to look at it from an overview perspective in terms of what we're looking at. So, if we took the top of the receiver case off and we were looking down, I like to look at this because this shows a few different things that we can quickly talk about. But first off, we have a massive heatsink right here on top of the I/O block, which is your HDMI input and output. And with HDMI 2.1, we've seen some issues with handshaking, especially going back to some of the older devices like HDMI 1.4 cable boxes and stuff along those lines. So with HDMI 2.1, seeing some issues in the field with handshaking, we found out that when we're passing so much data, 48 gigabit a second, we can run into some of those handshaking issues because it's just a lot of data being passed through an old reliable HDMI cable, right? HDMI always works as intended, and that's kind of the I guess running joke is HDMI is awesome, but at the same time you got to make sure everything handshakes well. So we have a heatsink on top of our I/O block to make sure we're pulling any of that heat off to give more stable HDMI stability. On top of that, we also have a new wireless module, which if you wanted to hook these receivers up into a room where you're not doing a full network, you can actually do wireless connectivity, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't take away from the audio performance of the receiver as well. So not only is this wireless module completely cabineted separately from the receiver, but it's also grounded separately from any of the components that'll be handling signal processing or amplification. Of course, we have the massive ES power transformer, which is just known very well as taking that power from the wall and delivering it to your system. And if you actually look down here at the heatsink, our engineers have even gone to the point of making sure that each one of these fins resonate at a different frequency. So you'll see one of these little dots in a different location, and that helps with resonance to make sure we don't take away from audio quality. So, Joe, as deep as I want to dive into the tech side of things, I just like to show the build side because what's important is not only are these sounding and looking good, but are they built to last? And these are very rugged receivers, and our engineers have gone through a lot to make sure that they perform well. So just moving into some of the different formats that we support. HDMI 2.1, we have 4 HDMI 2.1 inputs on our 3000 series and higher receivers. And then we have 2 HDMI 2.0 inputs, which you can run your older components or even cable boxes too. So that way you can have a more seamless handshake between 2.0 devices and 2.1 devices. We also support all of the different video formats from Dolby Vision, HDR10, which we spoke about a little bit earlier, IMAX Enhanced. And then from the audio format side of things, we're supporting DTS:X, Dolby Atmos, a lot of what is very common in our any receiver that you would purchase today. The big difference is just how many speaker terminals do you need, which is going to be the big deciding factor on which Sony receiver you're going to go with. If you're going to go with 9 channels, 11 channels, or 13 channels of audio, essentially. But one big feature, Joe, that we introduced is what's called 360 spatial sound mapping. And what this is
Yeah, I want to
audio
spend some time
processing.
on
Oh,
that.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying I want to spend some time on that for sure because it's a fascinating way that you guys have chosen to lay out the immersive sound, part of it, and that's really, of course, these days what home theater advancements are all about in receivers is a more immersive kind of an experience than what we had in the old 5.1 thing that we started with. So
Yeah, and even Joe, if you wanted to do 5.1, you'd be able to really bring out more in that system through signal processing. And so 360 spatial sound mapping is there for a imperfect or even a perfect speaker layout where let's say you have speakers in a position where you couldn't quite dial them in or get them exactly where you wanted to through 360 spatial sound mapping, we can really move those speakers around in theory and put them into areas where they're supposed to be and giving you a more impressive sound stage ultimately just more seamless audio passing from channel to channel. And this is just a feature that you can turn on or off. We're not forcing this on the industry. We know that there are a lot of people who want more of a purist and more of a flat and reference level of listening, where they're going to have the speakers exactly where they want them. And then we're going to have 360 spatial sound mapping for those people who, depending on the content they're watching, they can go ahead and toggle this on and off. All you need is minimum 5.1, and then you can unlock this feature through a room calibration. So the measurements that it takes, once you go through the calibration, it's quite extensive. They do distance to listening position and distance to screen and screen height and all this cool stuff. But just know that the amount of calibration that is happening to make sure that this processing is going to work as best as possible is truly impressive.
Well, and I think for a retailer like ourselves who does as much custom installation business as we do, and we know from our partners around the country, there are so many companies like ourselves doing a ton of custom. Very often, you really can't put the speakers exactly where you'd like them to go. It's just not going to happen. And so, I think this is a good way of you guys technically to have started addressing, hey, look, even if things are not located in the perfect location physically, you've got a way to make the experience more immersive.
Yeah, no, really that's what we were going for is ideally we always want to make sure we have everything where we want it, but it's just not how it works out in this industry. And it can be, we unfortunately can't see through walls, or maybe we got into a job site a little bit later of the construction and we just couldn't find out what exactly is going on. So in that case, hey, we have your back to our installers just as much as we do our customers who are listening in their home theaters. So overall, really excited for this feature, and this has just gotten rave reviews so far. So I'm really happy to see how well received this has been.
Yeah, it's great.
So just moving on, speaking of, we were talking about not getting speakers exactly where we want them, Joe. This is our connectivity portion where we can just talk about how all you can connect to the receiver. And one of the things you can do, if you look at there's a sub and rear wireless option, you can actually hook some of the Sony speakers that we have as wireless rears for our sound bars, and you can hook them up as wireless rears to our receivers. So I actually personally use this because I can't do ceiling speakers for my rears in my living room. And then behind me, I have my kitchen, a very open floor plan. So what I end up doing is I get these wireless speakers that I just power on and kind of throw in the back of the room for when I want to do movie night. And then when I'm not doing movie night, I have my left, center, and right channels just there at all times. So neat little feature there. We also have Google compatibility between Chromecast. I won't say the keyword and everyone's phones will go off, but that term. You also have Spotify Connect, and of course our favorite, which is going to be Works with Sonos. And Works with Sonos is our favorite, mostly because of how much Sonos is in this industry. They do a great job with the wireless sharing of audio between multi-room, and overall it's just a very seamless system. We can integrate into up to 32 zones of Sonos. So if you have an existing network, you can basically turn your Sony receiver into one of those Sonos zones. So that way you can control it through the app. The receiver toggles on automatically and will change the input whenever you hit play, which I know sounds pretty basic and rudimentary for a receiver to do, but normally you got to have a control system and program this. And it's just nice to be able to do it all through the application. So through the Sonos app, that is. So really excited to roll out this partnership, and the Works with Sonos badge also means that we have gone through extensive testing and making sure that this is going to work with the Sonos ecosystem as seamlessly as possible, Joe.
We think that's fantastic too, because certainly Sonos continues to be a real leader and just popular as heck. So the fact that you've got that compatibility now, yeah, good job on you guys.
Yeah, we just heard the call in the industry, and Sonos has just been an awesome partner to work with as well. So it's been just a win-win situation, I think, for everyone, and just really excited to finally have a turnkey solution for Sonos.
Yeah, man, love it.
So lastly, just to close out on our receiver portion, 5-year warranty. This is, you buy it once and you're good to go. You don't have to worry about having any issues down the road. And if you do, your installers at Gramophone will be able to help you out in getting that swapped out because it's warranted. And we really want to have a 5-year warranty just to show we're here for the life of the product. We don't want to give the impression that we're just here to sell something and then, just put it away and then you can upgrade in a couple years. This is showing that this is a statement piece, that this is here to stay. And these receivers are just super robust, but we want to give the insurance that, or the assurance rather, that, and the insurance, I guess you can say, that you have 5 years behind that product.
As many times as I've worked for manufacturers, I know there's no way you put a 5-year warranty on there unless you're very confident in how solidly the product is built and engineered. And just to briefly go back to, some of your comments you made right out of the gate in terms of power supply and heat sinking and so forth, I was delighted to see that slide because, these products, you want them to last. And, yeah, the build quality, I was so happy to see you start with that because we haven't just been impressed with the performance of these new receivers, but we can see the build quality as well.
Yeah, Joe, I've put on a good 15, 20 pounds of muscle since we released these receivers because it's just, they are so hefty, and having to carry them around and demo them, it's been fun. So no, these receivers are just absolute tanks. And I mean, just as built well as they sound good and look good. And overall, again, just really excited to have these.